Hey, InterVarsity alumni. This is After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. This is both an exciting and potentially tricky transition that you're making, and you might feel a little unsure about the coming weeks and months. We're here to provide you with expert advice, practical skills, and plenty of encouragement as you learn how to keep saying yes to Jesus in your new context. This is After 4, and this podcast is for you, alumni. What's up, alumni? Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele. Real quick, before we jump into the episode, your alumni relations team, the team that brings you this podcast and the InterVarsity World Changers podcast, is working to raise $50,000 by the end of June. And we're doing that so that we can continue creating these and other helpful alumni resources for you. So if you love this podcast or just love blessing other InterVarsity alumni like you, would you follow the giving link that I've put in the show notes for you and become a yearly or monthly partner with our work? Ministry partners like you are the ones who keep this podcast running. And let me just say, whether you're giving, listening, sharing, or any combination of the three, we really appreciate your support, alumni. All right, on to the episode here. This week, we continue our summer series on rest and different rhythms of rest to consider incorporating into your schedule. Last week, we talked to Lynn Bobb about a weekly Sabbath. So many great insights and helpful steps from Lynn. This week, we're looking at daily or semi-daily routines of rest in recreation. What are fun, restorative things that we can do throughout the week that help contribute to a healthy rhythm of rest in our lives? I'm joined by Stacy Jackson, a local Mankato friend of mine and the director of healthy living at our local YMCA. We cover a number of really helpful things, but I was most struck by how often time and our calendars came up as really important parts of this conversation. I think you're going to walk away with some practical next steps for developing day-to-day rhythms of rest and recreation. So let's get to it. Here's Stacy, and this one's for you, alumni. Stacy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to get to dig into this conversation of recreation together and where that fits in our rhythms of rest in life after graduation. Stacy, before we jump in, would you just do us the honor of introducing yourself? Help us get to know you a little bit today.
My name is Stacy Jackson. I have lived in Mankato for 11 years this summer. It will be. That's crazy.
Nice.
Yep. I am a mother and a wife. So my husband is a pastor here in town at Crossview Covenant Church. And that's what brought us to Mankato. And we have two daughters. Genesis is in her junior year at the University of Minnesota, and Trinity is in her freshman year at Bethel University.
That's great. So you've got some kids that are sort of living right here in this close to this age range, this space that we're engaging with. So there's probably some amount of like buy-in that you have just from a familial level here.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're in it right now. We're in it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so Stacy, you're also the director of healthy living at the local YMCA here. Am I correct about that?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep, I'm the director of healthy living. I've been in this role for just about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I owned my own personal training business, and I also coach volleyball at West High School and have done that for the past 7 years, going into 8.
And I know that you also had a stint of hanging out with college students who were learning to play billiards.
I did. That's a good memory. Oh, my word. Yeah, that was literally one of my favorite things I've done since I've been in Mankato. Such a great low key, but yet like environment you can engage with students and just kind of have fun with them. So I had a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I love that, across the board here, you just have a number of experiences that I think are going to like flavor our conversation. They give you some unique insights into like the recreation side of rest in particular. And so we're in the middle of a series here talking about rhythms and intervals of rest and what does it look like to set up these healthy rhythms stepping into life after graduation. I think most of our minds after we graduate are like, all right, I'm getting my job, I'm going to work on my career, and I'm going to start climbing that ladder and, making a name for myself. And I think that there are really valuable, positive, like there are good things to be done in that. Like work is a gift. We want to engage well in our work and be thoughtful and be excellent. but it can be easy to just sort of set rest by the wayside. And as we think about I think recreation might be one of them that gets forgotten or overlooked, at least in the realm of this is a part of rest. And I think it might be the one that maybe we have the most consistent access to, like sort of day to day rhythms of recreation and hobbies and those opportunities to find restoration in our just everyday context. So, I mean, Stacy, that's what comes to my mind when I think of recreation. But from your experience and the work that you do, and even from your own life and the ways that you recreate, like what is this actually? Help us sort of land on a working definition of recreation.
Well, first of all, let me say, I'm a big fan of working hard and moving up and whatever that looks like to you. That's phenomenal. But I'm also, as I get older, I'm a huge fan of taking care of yourself. So I feel
Mm.
like what that might mean different things for different people. For me, I'm a firstborn. I'm very
Okay. Yeah, me too.
intentional.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So I'm very intentional with my time, no matter what I'm doing. So my husband and I have used Google Calendar for our whole marriage. So that has been super helpful for us. I would find that if I didn't plan, I'm big into working out, running. I'm training for a triathlon right now too. So I'm big into plans, right? Like, so if it's not on my calendar, it's easy for me to let it go, right? And even like going out with friends or reading a book or whatever it is, I try to schedule that and be intentional about it.
Yeah, I think that that's really great. Like we can get so caught up in, I mean, we live in a culture of achievement, being noticed, being known, and that can just set our minds on this pace of like, okay, what's the work that I need to do to get this stuff done so that I can make a name. Like making a name for yourself just seems to be more accessible than ever, that we can just invest so much time into those things as opposed to the things that are good for us and restorative and are like part of healthy living. And so yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to actually calendar those things well. So then, I mean, Stacy, as you think of like recreation itself, what comes to your mind when you think of like, what does that actually mean to engage in recreation, or what does that do?
So I feel like for me, I'm kind of a different duck. So like
Okay, all right,
well,
that's
I mean, I
great.
just put that on the table because I'm not there's for it. I've done a few marathons and different things like that. There's got to be something a little bit off, like right for me.
Yeah.
So that to me is fun, right? Like so training or um whatever it looks like, the exercise piece has always been fun for me. And part of that's social, to be honest, engaging with others. And part of it's just an achievement that I feel is important for myself. So that's part of my recreation. That being said, I also find as I, well, even right out of college, the rest piece is big. So sleep has always been a really important thing for
Mm,
me.
yes.
Different things like that, just making time and putting that as a priority so that I can be present, even just to recreate, right? Like if you're not well rested and you're not eating the right foods or you're not getting that exercise, it's hard to be in the right place when you're with others. For me, that's just the way I feel about it.
Yes. Yes, like one of the things that stands out to me that you're talking about is like these are things that are fun for you. Like you would say, I do this because there's simply pleasure in the thing that I'm doing,
100%. 100%.
which like that feels like a generalizable idea. Like what are the things that you just have fun doing, no strings attached?
Yep.
And I would imagine, you said you're kind of an odd duck, that for you it's like it's running, it's a lot of this like physical exertion. So you may not necessarily feel like physically, I imagine after you're done having fun, you're ready to kind of sit down and breathe for a minute. Like you're physically maybe tired,
Yep.
but is there some sort of internal something that happens for you as you're engaged? Like what does that part of that look like for you? What is the restoration that happens in you when you engage in these things?
Right. I think the endorphins are huge and people talk about
Okay.
that, but until
Yeah.
you do something crazy like this, you don't really get it until you get into it. Right. And it could be walking a mile. It doesn't need to be something crazy like what I'm doing, but like I think during and is hard, right? And you go through these mental challenges and physical challenges, and then you finish and you're like, I just did that. Like
Yeah.
it's like exciting and fulfilling, and also just like, okay, like I feel like I got something done, you know?
That I think is really helpful because I think that we can really confuse sometimes like recreation and entertainment. And that's not to say that like one is good and the other is bad, like all the time or necessarily. That, I mean, I actually looked this up the other day, like little sidetrack. Like I looked up recreation because when I hear recreation, I think like there is a recreating that happens. I was like, I wonder if that's true or if that's just like what I'm hearing. And I looked this up and it actually talked about like in the original Latin, like to create again or to renew. And that as that word like continued through history, that it was this mental or spiritual consolation. And I thought even that word of consolation was really interesting to me. And it sounds to me like that's kind of what you're experiencing when you like the things that you consider recreation. They are fun for you in the moment. And when you're done with them, you are left with this sense of like, I might be physically tired from this, but I'm in a better state than I was before I started this.
100%. 100%. Let me just give you a funny example. When our children were little, like I remember I would literally get up super early because like I was worked part-time, but Brad had to leave by a certain time, so I would get up and run or whatever. And one day I didn't get my run in, and Brad got home and he was like, he's so gracious always. He was like,
Yes.
"Hey, do you need to go for a run? Because I feel like that might be beneficial for all of us." And I literally was like, I do. And he was like, why don't you go do that and then come back? Because he knows me so well that he knows
Yes.
I will be refreshed and where I need to be for my family if I get these things done.
There is something that does. It refreshes, it revives, it sets you on a course for like my life is going to be more positive, and the lives of the people around me are going to be more
I
positive.
care about my children. I need to
Yes,
get this
exactly. And I think like when I ask those questions, because I'm like, I think that this starts to give us an idea of what's a good metric for thinking about what is recreation for me, like what is restorative activity, because I find sitting down and, binging a few episodes of something on Netflix very fun and enjoyable.
Yep.
But it is rare that I feel better about myself and about my life after doing that thing. And I don't even necessarily mean that I feel like, oh, now my life is just in the tanks. like not even that. That's not what I mean. But just like there is a difference between this entertains me, it distracts me for a while, but I'm basically the same as I was. But I've just used up a couple hours of my life, as opposed to I invested this time. It was fun to do it on its own, and I am all the better for having done it. That maybe those are some metrics as we think about like what is recreational for people who don't enjoy running for long periods of time necessarily.
For sure.
Physically exerting. It could be a hobby of some sort, something like that as well.
Yeah. And I think truly with that age group you're talking about, when you guys are just getting out of college and figuring out your rhythm of life and what that looks like for you and what's healthy for you. For me too, I think having people around me that pour into me, that help me be a better person, and that will just ask one question and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is really enlightening to me. I also have friends that I have to limit my time with. And I don't mean that they're not bad people. They're wonderful. But for where I'm at in my life, I really want to spend time with people that are life giving and uplifting to me, and I can uplift them as well. So I feel like that's kind of a huge piece too.
That's a really interesting thought. I have not categorized relationship in that way. Sort of like even when it comes to recreation, who are the like quote unquote recreational people in your life that you're like, I step in with these people, we have a great time together, and our lives are better as a result, as opposed to like, these are people that I really enjoy, but I just have to I have to be mindful about how much time that I spend. Otherwise, maybe we don't always influence each other the best way, or we don't always talk about the most uplifting things, but they're my friends. I love them. We enjoy time together, but I just have to manage that time a little differently. And I think that that's a really interesting thought, that as we even develop relationships with people, of understanding who are the people that I can step into life with, and they set the rest of my day on this upward trajectory, and that could also be a part of stepping into recreation. So then what is it about this season of life in particular? Our listeners have just graduated. What is it about this season of life that makes it maybe vital is overselling it, but I don't think it is. Like, what is it about this season of life that makes it vital for establishing healthy rhythms of rest, and in particular finding places of recreation?
Right now is the time when you need to decide what your priorities are. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I've always been a big priority person. Like, what's my number one goal right now? And and you can do it for rest, you can do it for your life too. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
my number one goal is X. So you know what? That involves this chunk of time, and it can't be disturbed, which is great, right? Kind of place it where it needs to be. I mean, that sounds so basic, but also, like, if you can figure out what your priorities are, you've already achieved, in my mind, half the battle. Like, what's important to you? And it might be your job, which is great because you're probably going to need to support yourself, which is wonderful. But I mean, I
I
get that.
suppose.
But I mean, and is it making a lot of money, or is it having flexibility?
Mm.
So for me right now, I'm at the age now. I'm past whatever. Money is important. I get it. Whatever. But like, I'm at the point where if I can have flexibility, that's huge to me. Like, our younger daughter plays hockey. I'm going to be at all those games. That's just my personal thing. So I can flex my work schedule so that I can do that. Then that's your priority. That's okay. And I don't think you have to answer to anyone but yourself, to be really honest with you. Well, and Jesus.
Well, there is Jesus.
I mean, but I do what's right for you. I mean, unless you're in a relationship where you're married or you're committed to, I get that, but you got to do what's right for you, and you don't need to feel bad about it.
Well, and that sort of speaks to the nature of what is restful, what is recreational, that there's a certain amount of what works for someone else doesn't necessarily work for you. We have to be able to make those decisions of, okay, how does this work for my context, and what is actually restful and restorative for me? And I like what you're saying about like, what are the things that you value here? Like, what are the things that are important to you? We had a guest several months ago that gave the advice of step away from task-based calendaring and step into a values-based calendar. Like, what are the things that are meaningful to you, and prioritize those things on your calendar, which gets to what you were saying right at the top of our conversation. What does it look like to just calendar those things in? And now is the time to do that. This season of life is the time to do that, because it's only going to get more complicated the further that you get into life. The idea of time really is standing out to me here as, like, maybe this is one of the commodities here that's functioning behind the scenes that we don't really that we need to name. Like, I'm worried that I don't have enough time. And so that's why, because I've got to work, I've got to eat, I've got to sleep. So how is it that I have space to do things that are, like, physically, mentally, emotionally recharging for me, because I have all these other things that I must do, and I only have 24 hours in the day? And to say, like, okay, that's true. So then where are those spaces that things are taking up more time than they need to, or you're assuming that they're going to take more time than they actually do? And if you actually sat down and did, like, a time budget of your day and went through and calendared out your day very thoughtfully, that you might have more space to do the things or to be with the people that need you than what you originally realized.
Well, and I think too, like you said, take a look at it, print it out if you have to. Like, this is what I'm doing. I have my clients do it with food, right? Like, they write down what they eat every day. So it's the same concept where you're literally writing down, oh my word, I spent 2 hours last night watching Netflix too. If I did 30 less minutes, I could have got 30 more minutes of sleep, or I could have sat with my friend on the phone that needed me, or whatever it is. Like, you got to evaluate it. That's huge.
Yes, the calendar and the way that we're perceiving our time and where do our values come into those spaces, like that, those feel like they are a really important part of this whole conversation, like this conversation about recreation, but even our broader conversation about rest is just like, where are we mapping out the space, being proactive and intentional with our own time and saying like, okay, this is how this is going to fall into place. And I'm going to gently, compassionately let people know that, like, sorry, that just doesn't work for me. This time it doesn't work for me.
Correct.
Maybe next time.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a no for always and ever. But for this time, I'm going to say no to that.
But I also think it's important to remember that you're not letting people down if you say no. You're just upholding what's important at that point. Like you said, maybe later you can have time for that. But if someone says no to me now, I'm like, okay, I thank you for considering. I just keep in mind, we'd love to have you, or love to have you participate in that, or whatever. But it's okay. Like, I don't know. I remember too, I just wanted to add this. I had a conversation with my dad. This was when it was when I was first married. We did not have children. And I think I made a comment about how I remember my dad every morning, I'd come downstairs. He had the daily bread out with his Bible, and he had every day. He did it every day. And I remember being like, I don't know how you have time for that. I don't have time for that. And he literally told me this, and I will forever remember this. You have time for what you want to have time for, or you have time for what you want to make time for. Because I would get my workout in, right? Like I have time to watch Netflix. I have time to do this. It goes back to the life's about choices thing, right? You have time for it if you make time for it. So I think that's another key piece.
Yeah, no, I think that's so helpful, and that's not said like with a tone of like shaming or anything like that. That's said with a tone of personal responsibility, and you have the ability to make decisions that are meaningful and helpful. You have control in the situation. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, you have the control and the opportunity to do this, and like, go in the power of the Holy Spirit to make healthy decisions in your life, because you can do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a really empowering state of mind to live into. Stacy, so I'll ask this because you have kids at the age that you do. I will frame this question this way: if you were going to sit down with each one of your daughters as they were transitioning into life after graduation, what advice would you give to them in the realm of rest, recreation, and healthy life rhythms like that? What advice would you give them that maybe our audience members can listen in on?
Oh, I love that. I've been thinking a lot about this actually, because we have one that's going to graduate next year.
Okay.
So it's interesting. So I will just say, we always talk about priorities and we always talk about choices in our house, right? Like you need to set your priorities and establish them like now. Write them down, keep looking at them daily, if not daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. Just keep evaluating. Am I spending my time doing what I want to do and what is important, right? Like, and I will also say, like, besides the priorities, again, I say this to our girls all the time. Life's about choices, you guys. Some have different consequences than others. Okay. Some are a way bigger deal. So we kind of focus on some of the bigger things sometimes, but also if you say no to something, that means you can say yes to something else. So I feel like we talk about choices and priorities, and also just like, you got to keep God first. Like we really talk about this with our girls, and we have one at a public university and one at a Christian university. And by the grace of God, they're making it work, and they're prioritizing going to church. This could make me cry, but I'm not going to cry. But they've actually made a priority to go to church together, which is a huge, huge, huge
Oh,
deal.
that's amazing.
Yeah, so
that's so awesome.
We talk all the time about it. And in the end, though, like, no one can make you do it. I can't make my kids go to church. I can't make them read their Bible. I can't make them hang around people that are uplifting. I can give you choices, and I can give you advice if they want it. The other thing is, if they don't want it, like, this is my new norm. So our oldest will call and start venting, right? Which is great. I love it. And my first comment back is, do you want my advice, or do you just want me to listen? So Yeah, I think it's just being open and dialogue is great with your parents and maybe somebody else close to you that has the same values as you do. I think that's huge.
Yes. I think that's really great. The idea that you have choices, that there are choices in life, and saying yes or no, it creates space or it blocks off space. Like that's, that there are consequences. I don't mean that in a negative way, but there are repercussions. There are things that happen as a result of the decisions that we make. And also there are people that we can invite in to help us in that process. Not to say, tell me what to do, but to say, like, be a listening ear. Can you give me some insight and help me make a wise decision here? And that's whether that's a parent or a trusted friend, a mentor of some sort, like that. Those are really great people to look for. And as you're talking about making choices, even the little choices, because to me, something like recreation is a little choice that you make that over time has like really significant impact. And figuring out a way right now to engage well with rest is a matter of little choices each day, each week that really factor into something much bigger over the course of your life. And what are the decisions that you're going to make in those spaces? I think that's super helpful, Stacy. Stacy, thanks so much for giving some time to hang out, to talk about rest and recreation, to bring your personal experience into the space. And I think this has been super helpful. Thanks a lot, Stacy.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Okay, it feels to me like we have some extremely simple, straightforward takeaways from Stacy today, which I always love. What are the day-to-day activities that leave you feeling better than when you started? What things bring you a sense of enjoyment? What things leave you feeling rested and restored? Identify those things and put them first on your calendar each day or with some level of consistency throughout your week. Super simple. However, I'm guessing that for many of us, it's going to require some calendar management to make this possible. One way or another, our time gets filled. So how is it getting filled? And what is it that's filling it? Here's some steps that I think could be helpful for figuring that out. First, I highly encourage you to start tracking your time every day for a week. No judgment, just data collection. What time are you waking up and what does your morning routine look like? When you're at work, how much time is spent working and how much time is spent feeling distracted? When you get home, what are you doing during the evening and how much time are you spending with it? What time are you going to bed and how much sleep are you getting? What about your weekend routine? What does that look like? So much to consider, but be consistent and be meticulous as you track these things. Next, after you've collected that week's worth of data, spend some time looking it over. What do you notice about each part of your day? Are there consistent trends related to habits or activities that happen on particular days or at particular times during the day? How much time do you spend sleeping, scrolling, working, binging shows, moving your body, spending time with others? How do those different activities leave you feeling at the end of the day or after you've spent time doing them? And how does that compare to the way that you want to feel at the end of the day? Last thing, identify one or two healthy, restful activities that you can implement on a daily or semi-daily basis, and do those things in place of one or two of the things that just aren't healthy or restful. Now, as you do this, here's my guess as to what you're going to find out. And it won't be a shock because it comes up all the time. My guess is that most of us, not all of us, but most of us, will find that we spend way too much time scrolling or on streaming services or both, and that we aren't spending nearly enough time sleeping, exercising, or developing healthy, meaningful relationships. And I get it. When you get home at the end of the day, you just want to switch off. That's what I want too. But there is a difference between switching off and resting. Think about your tomorrow self. Do you think tomorrow you would benefit more from some extra me time on Netflix or TikTok tonight, or from an extra 90 minutes of sleep tonight? That's the beauty of sleep. It's all you time, and it's also healthy and restorative. And it doesn't always have to be one or the other. Instead of sitting on the couch and watching your favorite show, do an exercise routine with the TV on. But when your workout is done, turn off the TV, take a shower, and go to bed. Or invite a friend over, make a light, healthy dinner together, and watch an episode of your show together while you work out together. And it doesn't have to be that. What I'm saying and what Stacy is saying is that you are in control of your schedule, even to the extent that if it's your job that's making your schedule unhealthy, you have control over that. You don't have to work there if it's leading you down an unhealthy road. And you certainly have control over decreasing screen time in one form or another so that you can sleep more, move more, and engage more with others on a regular basis. These small daily decisions are going to add up over time. Alumni, make sure that that math is working in your favor. Stacy, thanks so much for joining me this week, and thank you for lending your expertise and life experience to our alumni in transition. All right, be sure to come back next week for a little fun in the sun as we talk about vacation as an important part of our healthy rhythms of rest. And don't forget, if you'd like to support your favorite alumni podcast, visit that giving link in the show notes during the month of June and help us reach our $50,000 funding goal so that we can keep bringing you After 4, the InterVarsity World Changers podcast, and other helpful alumni resources. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today, alumni. If there was anything that you learned, really enjoyed, or that encouraged you from today's episode, would you send us a DM or tag us in a story? We'd love to hear about it. You can find us at After4Pod on Instagram and Facebook. And if you haven't already, take just a second to unlock your phone and subscribe to the podcast. If your platform lets you, leave us a rating and a review. And if you like what we're doing here, share us with your InterVarsity or other post-graduation friends. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you in the after, alumni.